The Cradle of Whispers. The house, a modern minimalist cube of glass and steel, stood starkly against the ancient rolling hills on the outskirts of Chikamagaluru. For Anya Sharma, a university student earning extra cash through a well-regarded babysitting app, it was just another gig. Its surface gleamed as if constantly polished, and despite the child's age, it seemed to be the focal point of the room, drawing her eye. The first hint of something amiss wasn't a grand, terrifying spectacle, but a subtle shift in the everyday routine. It began with Arjun. He was, as his mother had promised, a very quiet boy, almost unnaturally so. He ate his dinner with polite, methodical bites, never once looking up at Anya. His eyes, when she managed to catch them, were large, dark, and seemed to hold an ancient, unblinking stillness that was unnerving in a child so young. He rarely spoke, and when he did, his voice was a soft, whispery murmur that seemed to get lost in the vastness of the house. After dinner, the bath. Arjun meticulously washed himself, refusing Anya's help, his small movements precise, almost ritualistic. The water in the tub, when she drained it, seemed to swirl unnaturally, forming a tiny, perfect vortex before disappearing down the plug hole. Anya dismissed it as an old drain, a quirk of plumbing, but the feeling of being watched began to take root, a cold, tangible presence, not just a vague unease. She'd be in the living room, reading, and suddenly the feeling would wash over her. Eyes on her, a persistent, unblinking gaze emanating from the direction of Arjun's room. She read him 2 stories, The Little Prince and a collection of local folk tales. He listened without a word, his dark eyes fixed on her face but not seeming to see her, merely observing. When she finished, he simply pointed to his bed. As she tucked him in, she noticed the cradle again. It seemed to shimmer faintly under the nightlight, its dark wood appearing almost translucent. She dismissed it as fatigue, the strange light, but a small seed of unease was planted. The incident was logged in her internal babysitter's report, a mental one, of course, as unusually quiet child, observation, good behavior. Professionalism, Anya thought, always preferred a tidy explanation, but the unaccounted sounds continued. Not just the settling of the house or the distant hum of the city, faint, high-pitched whimpers that seemed to emanate from Arjun's room, specifically from the area of the cradle, particularly after he was asleep. She preferred these wealthier, more isolated homes. Fewer distractions, more peace, and often better pay. The listing had been unusually detailed. A single child, a boy named Arjun, aged 4, strict bedtime, no pets, and a rather generous hourly rate, followed by peculiar clicks and scratches like something mechanical yet organic, too precise to be mice, too subtle to be structural decay. She'd sit up on the couch, heart thumping, straining her ears, but they would always vanish, leaving only the oppressive silence. She blamed the wind playing tricks on the old wood of the cradle, but her sleep grew restless. She found herself subconsciously altering her movements in the house, avoiding eye contact with the cradle, treating it as if it were a living, watchful entity. She'd take longer routes around it, keep her back to it when reading. Her meticulous nature, usually a source of comfort, now felt like a vulnerability. One night, around 3 a.m., as Anya was scrolling through her phone in the living room, a chilling sound cut through the silence. A soft, rhythmic tap, tap, tap coming from Arjun's room. Not a loud bang, just a consistent, gentle tapping. It continued for several minutes, unnerving her. She crept silently towards his door, heart pounding, and peered through the slight crack. The nightlight cast soft shadows. Arjun was perfectly still in his bed, but the tapping continued. It was coming from the cradle. She could see it clearly now in the dim light. The carved patterns on its dark wood seemed to undulate subtly, almost imperceptibly, as if they were alive. And from its depths she heard a faint, almost subliminal hum. Not from the house's wiring, it was deeper, resonating in the very bones of the cradle, a low, constant thrum that made the fillings in her teeth ache. It seemed to be emanating from within the wood itself. She pulled back, trembling, a cold dread washing over her. She knew with a sudden chilling certainty that Arjan was not the only one in that room. The anomalies escalated, subtle yet persistent, gnawing at Anya's rigid logical framework. The dust on the cradle no longer appeared as a thin film. It coalesced into patterns, swirling spirals, faint, intricate symbols she didn't recognize. Sometimes it looked like the faint outline of a child's handprint, small and delicate, formed on the dark wood. She'd photographed them with her phone, trying to make sense of the geometry, the meaning. But the images on her phone always looked like random smudges, nothing conclusive. The whispers grew louder, clearer. They were no longer indistinct murmurs. They were voices, direct, personal, calling out fragmented phrases in what sounded like ancient Kannada, but the tone was clear, pleading, despairing, sometimes angry, and occasionally a word or two in perfect accented English. Cold, below, lost, sleep with us, find. Anya, a psychology major, prided herself on her observant nature and her ability to remain calm under pressure. She'd handled everything from tantrums to minor medical emergencies. She heard a child's soft sob, a woman's desperate plea, a man's guttural gasp, always seeming to emanate from the depth of the cradle or from the dark corners of Arjan's room. She'd pause her vigil, straining her ears, but they would always fade, replaced by the oppressive silence of the house. She started seeing fleeting shadow figures in the corners of her vision, coalescing for a split second into familiar forms. A small child in a faded, old-fashioned dress, a grieving woman, an old man, before dissolving back into the darkness. Her own reflection in any polished surface, even the screen of her phone, seemed to distort, her features twisting into a fleeting grimace, a look of utter despair before normalizing. It was preying on her mind, twisting her thoughts, trying to isolate her further. She developed a slight tremor in her hands, barely noticeable but present. She stopped eating properly, stopped sleeping soundly. Her logical mind, her anchor, was slipping. She found herself talking to herself, muttering arguments against an unseen presence, then immediately regretting it, retreating further into herself. The few calls from her parents checking in became a source of dread. She couldn't tell them. They would think she was cracking under the pressure, or worse, that she was making up stories. She was truly alone. The entity, whatever it was, knew. It was nurturing her despair, cultivating her isolation. Anya tried to research the Khanna family online, an unprofessional breach of privacy, but a desperate one. Nothing. Their online presence was minimal, almost non-existent for such a wealthy, influential couple. There was no mention of Arjun's birth, no family history. It was as if they had appeared out of thin air or carefully erased their past. She tried to talk to Arjun, to coax him into a conversation about his life, his family. His eyes, those unblinking ancient eyes, would just stare through her. One time she asked him directly about the cradle. "Arjun, whose cradle is that? Why is it here?" He tilted his head, a faint, almost imperceptible hissing sound escaping his lips, a sound too old, too dry for a child. And then his whispery voice, clear now, chillingly so. It holds the tired ones, it remembers. His gaze drifted to the cradle, a strange, possessive intensity in his eyes. One particularly humid night, as Anya sat on the floor outside Arjun's room, trying to make sense of the pervasive chill and the constant hum, the whispers intensified. They were no longer just disparate voices. She wasn't one for ghost stories or local legends. Her fears were practical: missed assignments, bad grades, an empty bank account. She was wrong. The parents, Mr. and Mrs. Khanna, were a polished, urbane couple dressed in designer clothes even for a casual Friday night out. They were a chorus singing a lullaby, a haunting, melancholic tune sung in ancient Kannada, its melody both beautiful and terrifying. It was a song of sorrow, of loss, of sleep that never ended. And then, from the depths of the hum, a clear, distinct sound, a child's laugh. Playful, innocent, yet utterly chilling. Followed by that guttural chuckle, now louder, more confident. She felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to open the door, to enter the room, to lie down in the cradle, to surrender to the strange, alluring peace the lullaby offered. "Just rest, Anya. It's so tired. We're so tired. Join us. Peace awaits." She fought it. She slammed her fists on the floor, yelling into the empty air, "Get out of my head! You won't break me!" But the voices only grew louder, mocking her, promising an end to her suffering, promising her understanding. She knew what she had to do. She had to understand the cradle. She had to face it, whatever it was. She waited until the early hours of the morning when the house was at its quietest, the hum of the lullaby almost unbearable. She crept into Arjun's room, her flashlight beam cutting through the oppressive gloom, revealing the silent, sleeping child in his bed and the vast, dark presence of the cradle. The air was thick with the cloying sweetness, the scent of lilies and damp earth. She approached the cradle, her hands trembling. The carved patterns on its dark wood seemed to pulse with an unseen energy, the swirling designs appearing to move, to writhe under the soft glow of her flashlight. She reached out, her fingers hovering over the polished wood. It was colder than the air, radiating an unnatural chill. And then she noticed it. At the base of the cradle, almost hidden by the ornate carvings, was a small, almost invisible seam, a hidden panel. With trembling fingers she pressed along the seam. It clicked softly, and a narrow, rectangular section of the cradle's base slid open, revealing an inner compartment. A faint, unearthly blue light emanated from within. Rohan stumbled backward, gasping, but her eyes were drawn, transfixed to the opening. Within its depths something was unfolding, not a void, but a scene. A tableau. She saw not toys, not dust, but dozens, hundreds of tiny, glowing orbs of light suspended in a viscous, dark liquid. Each orb pulsed faintly with its own internal luminescence, a soft, ethereal blue. And within each orb, she saw a miniature, swirling galaxy of colors. Greens, purples, faint oranges, constantly shifting, constantly morphing. As she stared, mesmerized by a growing dread, she heard them, not whispers now, but a cacophony of distinct tiny voices emanating from the orbs. Mrs. Kana, a woman with a perpetually strained smile, gave Anya a rapid-fire rundown of Argent's routine. Dinner at 7, bath at 7,030, stories at 8, bed by 8,030. "He's a very good boy," she insisted, her eyes darting towards a closed door at the end of the long hallway. A child's innocent laugh, a mother's comforting murmur, a lover's whispered promise, a scholar's deep thoughts, a poet's gentle verses. All of them familiar, all of them beautiful, all of them utterly devastatingly human. And within each orb, she saw fleeting, distorted images, a smiling face, a beloved pet, a cherished memory, a moment of profound joy. They were souls, trapped, preserved, suspended in a timeless dark slumber. And then a new voice, rising above the chorus, clear and resonant, seemed to emanate from the largest, brightest orb at the center of the liquid. It was a voice she recognized, the gentle cadence of her grandmother's voice speaking in perfect Kannada. "Child, you see them now, the quiet ones. They brought us here to rest forever." A horrifying realization dawned on Anya. This was what the Kanas were. This was what Arjun was. They were not just the caretakers. They were the collectors, the custodians of the lost, the beings who lured souls into this permanent, horrifying slumber, and the cradle was their vessel. As she stood at the edge of the cradle, the lullaby intensified, now a seductive, mournful hum emanating from the glowing orbs, urging her closer, promising an end to her fear, promising her understanding. "Join us, Anya. Peace awaits. Rest forever." A cold, slender hand reached forward from the dark liquid, its fingers impossibly long, impossibly pale. It glided towards her, not quite touching, but she felt the chill of it, the pervasive cold that seemed to drain the warmth from her body. She saw the skin shimmering like water under moonlight, and she saw the eyes, two swirling vortices of darkest black, reflecting the blue light of the orbs with an unnatural, hungry gleam. A primal scream tore from Anya's throat, a sound of pure terror and defiance that ripped through the quiet of the room, a desperate act of self-preservation. She slammed the hidden panel shut with a desperate surge of adrenaline, her hands fumbling with the latch, trying to secure it, to close the terrifying glimpse into the abyss. The soft click of the latch echoed in the silence. The eerie blue light vanished. A little quiet, perhaps, but well behaved. Mr. Kana, a man who seemed more interested in his phone than the conversation, merely nodded, handing Anya a thick wad of cash. As they left, their luxury car purring softly down the winding driveway, Anya noticed a strange detail. The cradle stood dark and still, a silent, ornate wooden box. The scream that followed was not human. It was a piercing, inhuman shriek that seemed to tear through the very fabric of the house, a sound of pure, unadulterated rage and profound disappointment, a million voices crying out in unison. It seemed to rip through the air, leaving behind a silence so absolute it was deafening. She made it out of Arjan's room, stumbling through the quiet house. She didn't look back at the cradle. She didn't look at Arjan, who remained perfectly still in his bed, his dark eyes unblinking, fixed on the ceiling. She didn't lock the door behind her. She just ran out of the house, down the winding driveway, into the pre-dawn light, her body aching, her mind a shattered mess. She walked all the way back to her apartment in the city, miles away, her body aching, her clothes disheveled, her mind reeling. She must have looked like a mad woman, stumbling along the deserted roads, but no one saw her. Or if they did, they drove past, avoiding the sight, the madness in her eyes. She never babysat again. She quit university, unable to focus, unable to reconcile her ordered world with the horrifying reality she had witnessed. She moved to a small new apartment in a different city, one where she knew no one, where every face was a stranger. She avoids children now, particularly those with quiet eyes and unnaturally still movements. She avoids antique furniture, especially anything made of dark, polished wood. She avoids silence. She leaves the television on, always, a low hum of white noise to drown out the others. She checks her reflection endlessly, scrutinizing her own face, half expecting it to distort, to show the void. She tells herself it was a breakdown, hallucinations, the exhaustion of the night shift, the stress of final exams finally catching up to her. She repeats it like a mantra, a fragile shield against the terrifying truth. She clings to logic, to reason, but the shield is riddled with holes. From that day, she still remains thinking about it. She feels the faint, inexplicable cold spots, even in the warmth of summer. She sometimes catches the cloying, sweet scent of lilies and damp earth on a breeze or in the stillness of the night. She hears faint whispers, just on the edge of hearing, calling her name, promising her oblivion, echoing the ancient lullaby, the cries of the lost. She scrutinizes the faces of strangers, the expressions of friends, looking for that subtle distortion, that unnatural stillness in their eyes, that hint of ancient knowledge. She knows it's still there. In the Kana house, in the cradle, slumbering, waiting. Despite the evening breeze, a faint, almost cloying sweetness, like lilies left too long in stagnant water, seemed to cling to Mrs. Kana. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it registered on Anya's senses, an unusual note in the crisp Chickamauga air. Anya entered Arjan's room, and she knows, with a horrifying certainty, that it carried a piece of her with it, a resonance that was forever altered, forever open to its cold, unblinking gaze. She escaped the house, but she did not escape the entity. She is safe for now. She is forever haunted by the chilling knowledge that beneath the familiar veneer of our world, ancient, hungry things lie dormant, or perhaps actively pursue, waiting for the curious, waiting for the isolated, waiting for the fear, forever ensuring that some absences once experienced can never truly be filled. And she will always wonder what stories it now whispers from the cradle, what souls it now assimilates, and if, one day, the lullaby will grow louder and the Kanas will find her, inviting her to join the tired ones in their final, horrifying rest. From that day, she remained thinking about it, the fear a constant companion, a shadow that never quite faded. The house was hers, but it no longer felt like home. It felt like a stage, and she was the unwitting actor, performing for an audience she couldn't see. It was meticulously neat, almost sterile. A large, beautifully crafted wooden cradle stood in the corner, though Arjun was clearly too old for it. It was made of dark, polished wood, intricately carved with what looked like swirling, abstract patterns that seemed to shift and writhe under the soft glow of the nightlight. Thanks for watching. The veil between our world and theirs is thinner than you think. Each like, each share, each subscription strengthens the connection. Feed the channel before it feeds on you.